Doctor stared at her computer screen, her coffee growing cold as the numbers scrolled past. The radio telescope at Arecibo had picked up something impossible. The signal was too perfect, too organized to be natural. It came in mathematical sequences that any intelligent species would recognize. Prime numbers, then the sequence, then something that looked like basic chemistry. "Maria, come look at this," called to her colleague across the room. Dr. Maria Santos rolled her chair over, squinting at the screen. "Is this what I think it is? If you think it's first contact with an alien civilization, then yes." Hands shook as she reached for her phone. "We need to call the director immediately." The signal had been broadcasting for 3 hours. It came from a point in space beyond Pluto, somewhere in the outer solar system. The transmission was incredibly powerful and used frequencies that Earth technology could barely detect. Whoever sent it wanted to be heard. Within 2 hours, the small observatory buzzed with activity. Government officials, military personnel, and scientists from around the world connected via secure video calls. Found herself at the center of the most important moment in human history. "The pattern is clear," she explained to the assembled group. "They're showing us they understand mathematics and basic physics. This is exactly what we expected first contact to look like." Dr. James Park from the National Science Foundation nodded. "We follow the protocols we've established. Send back the next sequence in their mathematical pattern. Show them we understand." Began preparing the response transmission. Her team had trained for this moment for years. They would send back mathematical proofs, followed by basic information about Earth and humanity. It was supposed to be careful, measured, and peaceful. But 20 minutes before they could send their response, everything changed. Black SUVs pulled into the observatory parking lot. Men and women in dark suits walked through the front door without announcing themselves. They moved with the quiet confidence of people who had every right to be there, even though nobody had invited them. Doctor, a tall woman with silver hair, approached his workstation. "I'm Director Sarah. I need you to step away from your equipment." "I'm sorry, who are you exactly?" Stood up, blocking the woman's path to her computer. "That's classified, but I'm the person who's taking over this operation." Director held up a badge that had never seen before. It wasn't FBI or CIA or any government agency she recognized. The badge simply said the agency in black letters. Dr. Park tried to intervene. "Now wait just a minute. This is a scientific matter. We have protocols in place for exactly this situation." Director turned to him with a patient smile. "Dr. Park, those protocols are now suspended. This facility is under federal control as of 15 minutes ago. I need everyone to step back and let my team work." More people in suits entered the room. They carried equipment that didn't recognize. Within minutes, they had connected their devices to the radio telescope systems. The computers that and her team had spent years programming were suddenly running new software. "This is ridiculous," Maria whispered too. "They can't just take over like this." But they could, and they did. The agency personnel worked with the smooth efficiency of people who had done this before. They seemed to understand the telescope equipment better than the scientists who operated it daily. Their computers interfaced with the alien signal as if they had been designed specifically for this purpose. Watched in growing amazement as the agency team decoded the alien transmission in real time. The mathematical sequences that had taken her team hours to understand were being analyzed and responded to within minutes. The agency's computers seemed to understand not just what the aliens were saying, but how they were saying it. "How are you doing this so fast?" couldn't help asking. Director glanced at her. "We've had practice." "Practice? Practice with what? This is the first time humans have ever received a signal like this." "Is it?" Director's smile was cold and knowing. The agency team leader, a young man with thick glasses, looked up from his computer. "Director, We've mapped their transmission protocols. We understand their language structure and their technology signatures." Already, Director seemed pleased but not surprised. "Yes, ma'am. They're broadcasting from a ship approximately 40 million miles beyond Pluto. The ship is roughly 2 kilometers long, has a crew of about 300, and is using quantum-encrypted communications that they believe are impossible to intercept." Felt the blood drain from her face. "How could you possibly know all that?" "Because we've been watching them for 6 weeks, the team leader replied casually. "They entered our solar system on October 15th. We've been tracking their movements and analyzing their technology since then." The room fell silent, looked around at her fellow scientists, all of whom appeared as shocked as she felt. The government officials on the video calls were frantically whispering to people off-screen. Director nodded to her team. "Send the response." "What response?" demanded. "You can't just respond without consulting the scientific community. This affects all of humanity." "Doctor, humanity has been preparing for this moment longer than you realize. We know exactly what to say." Watched helplessly as the agency transmitted their response to the alien ship. But this wasn't the careful, peaceful message that the scientific community had planned. The transmission that went out was complex, powerful, and somehow threatening. It carried data that should have been impossible to obtain and demonstrated technological capabilities that New Earth didn't possess. The response took only 3 minutes to transmit, but could tell it contained more information than her team had planned to send in their first year of contact. "What did you just tell them?" she asked. Director began packing up her equipment. "We told them the truth, Doctor. We told them that we know exactly who they are, where they came from, and what they're capable of. We told them that we've been ready for this conversation for a very long time." As the agency personnel filed out of the observatory, stared at her computer screen. The alien transmission had stopped. In the silence of space, she wondered what the aliens were thinking right now. She had a feeling they were very, very surprised. Outside, Director spoke quietly into her secure phone. "Phase 1 complete. The know we're aware of their presence. Time to see how they handle being the ones who are surprised for once." Director Sarah stood in the underground facility known only as Site 7. The room hummed with the sound of dozens of computers and communication equipment that officially didn't exist. On the main screen, data streamed in from satellites, deep space monitors, and listening posts scattered across the globe. "Status report," requested as she entered the command center. Agent Mike Torres looked up from his workstation. "They have gone completely silent since we sent our response. Their ship stopped moving and they've cut all external communications." "How long has it been?" 18 hours, Director. They're definitely analyzing what we sent them." Nodded. She had expected this reaction. The agency's response had been carefully designed to make the aliens stop and think very carefully about Earth and its inhabitants. Dr. Lisa Park, the agency's head linguist, approached with a tablet in her hands. "Director, we've finished decoding their complete language database. We now understand not just their words but their cultural context, military terminology, and social structure." "In 18 hours, raised an eyebrow. "Our quantum computers made it possible. Plus, we had a head start. We've been studying their communication patterns since they entered the system." The agency had been preparing for alien contact for longer than most people realized. What had started as a military project during the Cold War had evolved into something much larger. While NASA and SETI searched for signals, the agency had been building the infrastructure to handle what would happen when those signals arrived. Agent Jennifer, the team's technology specialist, pulled up a holographic display. "We've mapped their entire ship, Director. The quantum scanners penetrated their hull completely. They have standard crew quarters, a command center, weapon systems that are mostly defensive, and what appears to be a diplomatic suite." "Weapons?" Nothing that could threaten Earth from their current position. Their technology is advanced, but it's designed for space travel and peaceful contact. They're explorers, not conquerors. Studied the holographic ship rotating slowly in front of her, and they know we scanned them. "Oh yes," smiled grimly. "We made sure our scanning pulse was detectable. We wanted them to know we could see through their stealth systems." The agency's response to the first contact had been unlike anything the aliens had ever encountered. Instead of the careful, primitive reply they expected, they had received a transmission that demonstrated complete understanding of their technology, language, and intentions. The response had included detailed specifications of their ship, crew complement, and mission parameters, information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. Agent Torres called out from his station. "Director, we're receiving a priority transmission from the ship." "Put it on the main screen." The transmission appeared as text, automatically translated by the agency's computers. The message was brief and clearly urgent. "To the governing body of Earth, we acknowledge your response to our peaceful contact attempt. We request clarification on how you obtained detailed information about our vessel and mission. We also request confirmation that you represent the dominant species of your planet. Please respond through standard diplomatic channels." Read the message twice. They're rattled. They went from trying to contact a primitive species to discovering they're talking to someone who knows more about them than they're comfortable with. Dr. Park studied the message structure. "Look at the language they're using, Director. They've switched from simple mathematical concepts to formal diplomatic terminology. They're treating us as equals now, not primitives." Which was exactly the point. Turned to her team. "Prepare response package 7. Agent brought up a new display. "Package 7 includes our complete deep space monitoring network, correct?" "Correct. Show them that we've been watching not just them, but everything that enters our solar system. I want them to understand that Earth is not undefended and humanity is not unprepared." The agency had spent decades building a surveillance network that extended far beyond Earth's atmosphere. Satellites, space-based sensors, and monitoring stations tracked everything larger than a football within billions of miles of Earth. The system had originally been designed to watch for incoming missiles during the Cold War, but it had been expanded to watch for something much more exotic. Dr. Park worked on the message translation. "We're telling them that we've been aware of their presence since they entered our solar system. We're including tracking data for their entire journey to this point. Add the scan data for the other ships," instructed. Torres looked surprised. "Other ships, Director?" "There are 3 more vessels holding position near Jupiter. They think we don't know about them." The expression was cold and professional. "Show them that we do." The agency had detected the additional ships 2 days ago. They had positioned them as backup, probably standard procedure when making first contact with an unknown species. But Earth's detection systems were far more sophisticated than the aliens had anticipated. Added the additional data to the transmission. "This is going to scare them badly, Director. They'll realize their entire fleet has been compromised." "Good. Fear leads to respect. Respect leads to honest negotiation." The response took shape over several hours. It included not just tracking data for all 4 ships, but also technical specifications that demonstrated Earth's defensive capabilities. The message made it clear that humanity had been preparing for alien contact for decades and had developed countermeasures for technologies that the thought were undetectable. The most shocking part of the response was the cultural analysis. The agency had not only decoded the language but had analyzed their social structure, military hierarchy, and diplomatic protocols. The response addressed the fleet commander by his correct title and mentioned specific details about history that should have been impossible for humans to know. "How do we get information about their history?" Torres asked as he reviewed the final message. Dr. Park smiled. "We didn't, but we extrapolated it from their language patterns, social cues, and communication protocols. Our computers made educated guesses about their culture based on how they structure their thoughts and express concepts. And if we're wrong, then they'll correct us. But if we're right, they'll be convinced that we have intelligent sources they don't know about. Approve the final message, send it. The transmission went out using the same quantum frequencies they had used, but with power levels that demonstrated Earth's technological capabilities. The message was encrypted using the own security protocols, proving that humanity had completely penetrated their communication systems. As the transmission ended, looked at her team. Now we wait to see how they react to learning that the primitive species they wanted to contact has been watching them from the moment they entered our solar system. Agent monitored the alien ship's response. Their energy signatures are spiking, Director. They're having intensive discussions. I bet they are, said quietly. They came here expecting to find cave dwellers with radios. Instead, they found a species that's been preparing for this meeting longer than their own mission has existed. The waiting game had begun. Earth had played its hand, demonstrating capabilities that no primitive species should possess. Now it was time to see how they would respond to the discovery that humanity was far from helpless. Had a feeling this was going to be a very interesting conversation. Fleet Commander stared at the human response displayed on his command screen, his 4 arms trembling slightly. In 40 years of military service and over 24 first contact missions, he had never seen anything like this. The data streaming across his monitors was impossible, terrifying, and completely accurate. Communications Officer K confirmed these readings, ordered, his voice tight with controlled panic. The younger bent over her console, her tentacle-like fingers dancing across the controls. Sir, the humans have provided exact specifications for our ship. They know our crew size, our weapon capabilities, our shield frequencies, and even our food storage levels. That's impossible. Our stealth systems are the most advanced in the collective. That's what I thought too, sir. But look at this. Kay highlighted a section of the human message. They've included tracking data showing our entire journey from the outer rim to this system. They've been watching us for weeks. Science officer on approached the command station, his scales pale with shock. Commander, it gets worse. They know about the backup fleet near Jupiter. Felt his stomach drop. The 3 ships positioned near the gas giant were their insurance policy, hidden using the best stealth technology the collective possessed. No primitive species should have been able to detect them. Are you certain? They've provided exact coordinates and ship classifications. They even know which ships carry which crew specialties. On's voice was barely above a whisper. Sir, they know things about our fleet that some of our own crew members don't know. The command center fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Had led first contact missions to 17 different worlds. Each time, the pattern was the same. The collective would approach carefully, send mathematical signals, and wait for the primitive species to respond with basic acknowledgments. Then would come months or years of careful cultural exchange, slowly introducing the new species to galactic civilization. This was different. The humans had responded to their peaceful greeting with a demonstration of intelligence and technology that rivaled the collective itself. Worse, they had done it in less than a day. Open a secure channel to the High Council, commanded. The holographic display shimmered, then resolved into the image of High Counselor, the elderly who led the collective's first contact protocols. His usually calm expression showed deep concern. Commander, we've been monitoring your mission. This human response is unexpected. Sir, with respect, unexpected doesn't begin to cover this situation. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that we didn't know existed. They've penetrated our stealth systems, decoded our communications, and apparently been tracking our entire fleet since we entered their system. Counselor's image flickered as he consulted with others off-screen. "Commander, our xenology experts are analyzing the human message. The cultural information they provided about us is startlingly accurate. They seem to understand our social structure better than some of our own young people." "How is that possible, sir?" "We don't know. Their message includes references to historical events, military traditions, and cultural practices that we've never transmitted to anyone outside the collective. Either they have intelligent sources we don't know about, or they possess analytical capabilities that are far beyond what we expected from this species." On interrupted quietly, "Commander, we're receiving additional transmissions from Earth, multiple sources." "Put them on screen." The display showed communication intercepts from around the human planet. Radio signals, satellite transmissions, and data streams that painted a picture of a technologically advanced civilization. But more disturbing were the deep space monitoring stations that had apparently been watching the collective fleet since they entered the outer solar system. "Sir," Kay reported, "their deep space network extends billions of miles from their planet. They have monitoring stations positioned throughout their system that we never detected. They've been watching us the entire time." Studied the data with growing alarm. This isn't the behavior of a species that just discovered they're not alone in the universe. This is the behavior of a species that's been preparing for contact for a very long time. The implications were staggering. Every first contact protocol the collective used was based on the assumption that they were dealing with species that had never encountered alien life. The careful introduction process, the gradual cultural exchange, the slow revelation of galactic civilization, all of it assumed they were dealing with innocent primitives. The humans were clearly not innocent primitives. Counselor's voice carried a note of worry that had never heard before. "Commander, we need you to determine whether the humans represent a threat to collective security. This level of preparedness and technological capability could indicate hostile intentions." "Sir, I don't believe they're hostile. Their message was direct but not threatening. However, their capabilities are far beyond what our intelligence estimated. Could we have misjudged their technological development?" Science officer on pulled-up comparative analysis charts. "Counselor, based on their radio emissions and energy signatures, they should be roughly equivalent to a Class 3 civilization. Limited space travel, basic nuclear technology, primitive computational systems. Instead, they're demonstrating Class 5 capabilities. Advanced quantum computing, deep space monitoring, and analytical systems that rival our own." Felt a chill run through his body. "Sir, what if our intelligence was deliberately misleading? What if the humans wanted us to underestimate their capabilities?" The possibility hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If the humans had been deliberately concealing their technological advancement, it suggested a level of strategic thinking that was deeply concerning. No species in collective history had ever successfully deceived their initial assessment teams. "Commander," Counselor said slowly, "you're suggesting that the humans have been watching us watch them, that they've been preparing for this contact while making themselves appear primitive." "It would explain everything, sir. Their rapid response time, their detailed knowledge of our systems, their apparent readiness for contact with alien life. They've been ready for this conversation for a very long time." On highlighted additional data on his screen. "Sir, there's something else. The humans didn't just send us information about our own ships. They sent us information about our home systems, star charts, planetary data, fleet movements. Information they could only have if they've been monitoring collective space for years." The command center fell completely silent. The idea that the humans had been conducting long-range surveillance of collective territory was almost too frightening to consider. It suggested intelligence gathering capabilities and strategic thinking that exceeded anything the collective had encountered in over 1,000 years of space exploration. Counselor's image wavered as urgent conversations erupted in the background. "Commander, the Council is calling an emergency session. We need to reassess everything we thought we knew about this species." "What are our orders, sir?" "Maintain position and continue monitoring human communications. Do not, under any circumstances, approach their planet without Council authorization. We may be dealing with the first species in collective history that's more prepared for first contact than we are." As the transmission ended, looked around his command center. His crew members stared at him with expressions of confusion and fear. They had come to make peaceful contact with a primitive species, but instead had discovered a civilization that seemed to know more about the collective than the collective knew about itself. "Sir," Kay asked quietly, "what do we do now?" Studied the human planet rotating slowly on his display screen. Somewhere down there, the humans were probably having their own meetings, making their own decisions about how to handle contact with alien life. But unlike every other species the collective had ever encountered, the humans had been ready for this conversation. "Now we wait," he said finally, "and we try to figure out exactly who we're dealing with." Director Sarah stood in front of the massive wall display at Site 7, watching the feed from the fleet. For 2 days, the alien ships had remained motionless while their crews apparently debated how to handle humanity's unexpected response. "They're scared," Agent Torres observed, monitoring their communications. "The chatter we're picking up suggests they think we're some kind of advanced military power hiding as primitives." Almost smiled. "In a way, they're not wrong. Dr. Park, is the cultural exchange package ready?" Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her workstation, where she had been preparing humanity's next message. "Ready, Director, but are you sure we want to reveal this much about ourselves?" "It's time for honesty. They need to understand what they're actually dealing with, not what they think they're dealing with." The cultural exchange package was unlike anything the agency had ever prepared. Instead of hiding humanity's capabilities or maintaining the illusion of superior technology, it told the complete truth about how Earth had prepared for alien contact. The truth was stranger and more human than any alien species would have expected. Agent brought up the historical data files. "The archive goes back to 1947, Director, Project Blue Book, the Cold War surveillance programs, SETI, and everything that led to the creation of the agency. Include it all, show them the full timeline." The story began in the paranoid atmosphere of the 1950s, when the United States and Soviet Union were convinced that enemies might attack at any moment. Military strategists had looked at the vastness of space and asked a simple question: what if the threat doesn't come from Earth? The first deep space monitoring systems had been built to watch for Soviet satellites and missiles, but paranoid engineers had designed them to detect anything unusual coming from space. When the Cold War ended, those same engineers looked at their massive surveillance network and realized it could be repurposed for a different kind of threat. Dr. Park narrated as the data compiled. The agency was formed in 1991, officially as a weather monitoring service. Unofficially, it was tasked with preparing for potential alien contact, not because anyone believed aliens were coming, but because military planners wanted to be ready for anything. The truth was that the agency's impressive capabilities hadn't come from advanced alien technology or secret scientific breakthroughs. They came from 50 years of Cold War paranoia, military overengineering, and the very human tendency to prepare for threats that might never materialize. The quantum computers that had decoded language so quickly, they had been built to break enemy codes during wartime. The Deep Space Monitoring Network, originally designed to track incoming missiles. The Rapid Response Protocols, developed during decades of nuclear standoff, when every decision had to be made in minutes or face global destruction. The beauty of it, explained to her team, is that all of our impossible capabilities actually come from very human traits. We're paranoid, we overprepare, and we assume the worst about everyone we meet. Agent Tors highlighted sections of the message. We're telling them that we've been preparing for alien invasion since 1947. Not invasion specifically. We've been preparing for any kind of contact with unknown entities. The protocols we used with them are the same ones we developed for first contact with enemy submarines, hostile aircraft, or unidentified satellite signals. The cultural package included detailed explanations of human military thinking, strategic planning, and what psychologists called threat assessment paranoia. The agency showed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology. It was the ability to imagine worst-case scenarios and prepare for them in advance. Dr. Park added psychological profiles to the message. We're including analysis of human strategic thinking patterns, how we approach unknown situations, how we gather intelligence, how we make decisions under pressure. The message explained that humans were naturally suspicious of peaceful overtures from unknown entities. Earth's history was filled with examples of seemingly friendly contacts that turned hostile. Humanity had learned to be polite but prepared, welcoming but watchful. Include the military exercises, ordered. Agent pulled up files from decades of war games and training scenarios. The agency has been running alien contact simulations since 1995, every possible scenario from peaceful trade to hostile invasion. We've literally practiced this conversation thousands of times. They would learn that the agency's rapid response wasn't due to superior intelligence or advanced technology. It was because humans had spent years role-playing exactly this situation. Every member of the agency had trained for alien contact the same way soldiers train for war, through endless repetition and preparation. The message included something that no other species in the galaxy would have thought to prepare: detailed psychological profiles of likely alien psychology based on human military intelligence techniques. The agency had spent decades studying how to analyze unknown entities based on their communication patterns, strategic choices, and cultural cues. We reverse-engineered their entire culture in 18 hours because we've been practicing cultural analysis since the Cold War, Dr. Park explained. We got good at figuring out what enemy societies were like based on limited intelligence. They were just another intelligence problem. The truth was both more impressive and less impressive than the aliens believed. Humanity didn't possess miraculous technology or godlike intelligence. Instead, they possessed something that apparently no other species had developed: the ability to prepare extensively for encounters they had never had with entities they had never met. Approve the final message. Send them the complete package: historical timeline, psychological analysis, military doctrine, and cultural background. Show them exactly what kind of species they're dealing with. The transmission included unprecedented detail about human civilization. They would learn that humans had been divided into competing nations for thousands of years, constantly preparing for war with each other. They would discover that Earth's impressive surveillance networks existed because humans didn't trust each other, let alone alien visitors. Most importantly, they would learn that humanity's readiness for alien contact came from a very human assumption: that anyone who showed up unannounced was probably up to something. Director, Agent Tors called out, "We're receiving a priority response from the lead ship." The message appeared on the main screen, automatically translated. "To the humans of Earth, we have reviewed your cultural data package. We request clarification. Are you stating that your entire civilization has been preparing for contact with unknown species due to distrust and paranoia?" Read the message twice, then dictated her response. Confirmed. Humanity has been preparing for alien contact since 1947 because we assume that anyone with the technology to travel between stars might not have peaceful intentions. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. The follow-up message was brief. We also request clarification. Do all human nations possess these defensive capabilities? His response was honest and slightly terrifying. Negative. The capabilities you have observed represent a small portion of Earth's defensive preparations. Each major nation has its own version of the agency, with different specializations and capabilities. We have been competing with each other to be ready for threats like you for over 50 years. As the transmission ended, looked at her team. Now they understand what they're really dealing with. Not a super-advanced civilization, but a paranoid one. A species that's been assuming someone was coming to invade us since we invented radio. Dr. Park studied the alien ship readings. Their energy signatures suggest intense discussions, Director. I imagine they're trying to decide whether dealing with paranoid humans is better or worse than dealing with mysteriously advanced humans. Agent looked up from her console. Director, we're receiving multiple signals from the other ships in their fleet. It looks like they're all participating in the discussion now. Nodded. They're probably trying to figure out whether our paranoia makes us more dangerous or less dangerous than they originally thought. The waiting game continued, but now both sides understood each other better. They knew they were dealing with a species that had been preparing for this moment for decades, not because they were advanced, but because they were naturally suspicious of everyone they met. And humanity had revealed its greatest strength, the ability to be ready for anything, even things that had never happened before. What do you think they'll do next? Torres asked. Studied the alien fleet positioning. If they're smart, they'll realize that paranoid humans are actually easier to deal with than mysterious superhumans. Paranoia responds well to transparency and mutual understanding. She paused, watching the data streams. Of course, if they're not smart, they might decide that paranoid humans are too dangerous to deal with at all. The next few hours would determine which conclusion they reached. Fleet Commander read the human cultural data for the third time, his understanding of the species growing with each review. The revelation that humanity's impressive capabilities came from paranoia rather than advanced technology was both reassuring and deeply unsettling. So let me understand this correctly, Science Officer On said, reviewing the same data. The humans have been preparing for alien invasion for over 70 years, not because they had any evidence that aliens existed, but because they wanted to be ready for anything that might threaten them. That appears to be correct, Communications Officer K confirmed. Their entire defensive network was built around the assumption that someone might try to attack them from space. They've been watching for threats that didn't exist until we arrived. Studied the detailed breakdown of human military psychology. The data was fascinating and terrifying. Humans apparently assumed that any unknown entity was potentially hostile until proven otherwise. They prepared for worst-case scenarios as a matter of routine. Most remarkably, they had multiple competing versions of the agency, each trying to be more prepared than the others. Commander, On said quietly, in some ways, this makes them more dangerous than if they were just technologically superior. Superior technology can be countered with superior technology, but paranoia and preparation. How do you counter a species that has already thought of everything you might do to them? The question hung in the air. The collective had encountered hundreds of species of exploration, but they had never met one that had spent decades preparing for alien contact before aliens actually arrived. It was like meeting someone who had been practicing for a conversation they weren't sure they would ever have. Open a channel to the High Council, ordered. Counselor appeared on the holographic display, looking older and more tired than he had 2 days ago. Commander, the Council has been analyzing the human cultural data. This is unprecedented in our history of first contact. Sir, how do we proceed? Normal protocols assume we're dealing with species that are surprised by our existence. These humans have been expecting us for longer than some of our crew members have been alive. The team is divided. Half believe that human paranoia makes them too unpredictable for safe contact. The other half argues that their preparedness makes them ideal partners, since they won't make decisions based on fear or surprise. Considered this, what does the military assessment say? The humans possess no weapons that could threaten collective space directly. However, their defensive preparations are so extensive that any attempt to subjugate or control them would be costly beyond measure. They've basically made themselves too difficult to conquer. It was a brilliant strategy, even if the humans hadn't intended it as strategy at all. By preparing for threats that might never come, they had made themselves immune to most forms of aggression. Any potential enemy would have to work against defenses that had been planned and refined for decades. "Sir," Kay interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from the agency." The message appeared on screen, translated into collective standard. "To Fleet Commander and the Collective, we propose a formal diplomatic exchange. We understand that our preparedness may seem threatening, but we offer the following perspective. A species that prepares for war but chooses peace is more trustworthy than a species that is unprepared for war and promises peace." Read the message twice. There was wisdom in it that impressed him. They're offering to share their defensive knowledge as a gesture of trust. The follow-up message was even more intriguing. "We have studied your culture and believe we have much to learn from each other. You have achieved something humans have never accomplished, the peaceful unification of multiple species. We would value the opportunity to understand how you achieved this. In return, we offer our expertise in threat assessment and defensive preparation." On looked up from his analysis console. "Commander, they're proposing a knowledge exchange. They want to learn our diplomatic techniques, and they're offering to share their military strategic thinking." It makes sense, realized. They've mastered the art of preparing for threats, but they've never mastered the art of preventing those threats from occurring in the first place. The message continued. "We propose that Director Sarah of the agency meet with appropriate collective representatives to establish formal diplomatic relations. We suggest neutral space between our forces for this meeting." Counselor appeared to be consulting with others off-screen. "Commander, the Council is interested in this proposal. The humans are offering something we've never had access to, the perspective of a naturally defensive species. Our peacekeeping methods work well with cooperative species, but we've always struggled with aggressive ones. Because aggressive species think like the humans do." Exactly. If we can understand human defensive psychology, we might be able to better handle the few hostile species we encounter in our expansion. Found himself impressed by the elegant solution. The humans were offering to trade their greatest strength, their ability to prepare for threats, in exchange for learning the collective's greatest strength, their ability to prevent threats from developing in the first place. "Sir, I recommend we accept their proposal." The Council agrees. Arrange the meeting. 6 hours later, a small shuttle launched from the flagship. It met an equally small Earth vessel at a point precisely halfway between the two fleets. Director Sarah and Fleet Commander faced each other across a simple table in the neutral meeting space. "Commander," said in carefully practiced, "thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "Director," replied in equally careful English, "thank you for your patience with our surprised reaction to your preparedness." Smiled. "Commander, in our experience, the best way to avoid conflict is to be so prepared for it that nobody wants to start one. We've been preparing for this conversation for 50 years, but we've always hoped we'd never need to have it. And yet you're having it willingly. Because you approached us peacefully, openly, and honestly. Our preparation was for the worst-case scenario. You've proven to represent something much better." Studied the human across from him. She was calm, professional, and clearly intelligent, but there was something else in her manner, a constant alertness, as if she were always aware of potential threats. "Director, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Do you enjoy being constantly prepared for threats that may never come?" Considered the question carefully. "Commander, humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We've learned that preparation doesn't prevent hope. If anything, it makes hope possible because we know we can handle whatever comes." "And what do you hope for from this contact?" "We hope to learn how you've convinced 12 different species to work together peacefully. That's something humanity has never achieved, even among ourselves. If we could learn that skill, maybe we could spend less time preparing for war and more time building a better civilization." Felt something he had rarely experienced in first contact situations, genuine mutual respect. "Director, I believe we have much to teach each other." "I agree, Commander. Your people have mastered cooperation. My people have mastered preparation. Combined, that might be quite powerful." The formal negotiations took 3 days, but the foundation was laid in that first conversation. The collective gained access to human strategic thinking, threat assessment techniques, and defensive planning methods. Humanity gained access to collective diplomatic protocols, conflict resolution techniques, and multi-species cooperation models. 6 months later, submitted his final report to the High Council. The humans represent a unique addition to galactic civilization. While their defensive paranoia initially appeared threatening, it has proven to be their greatest gift to interspecies relations. They are the first species we have encountered that assumes hostile intent until proven otherwise, yet chooses peaceful cooperation once that proof is provided. Recommendation: establish permanent diplomatic relations with full exchange status. The human approach to threat assessment has already improved our ability to handle aggressive species by 300%. Their defensive strategies are being adapted by 17 collective worlds. Personal note: I have learned that the best way to earn human trust is to be completely honest about your intentions. They respect transparency and despise deception. Conversely, the humans have learned that the best way to earn collective trust is to demonstrate their willingness to help others rather than just protect themselves. Final observation: both species have discovered that their greatest strengths complement each other perfectly. The humans now prepare for threats more efficiently because they understand how to prevent many threats from developing. The collective now handles genuine threats more effectively because we understand how to prepare for worst-case scenarios. The galaxy is safer with humans as partners rather than unknowns. Director's corresponding report to Earth's leadership ended with a simple observation. We spent 50 years preparing to fight aliens. Instead, we learned how to make the galaxy more peaceful. Sometimes the best defense is a good partnership.